Alright, so I'm back with another video, and in this video I'm going to be going over another opening trap. I'm not so sure that this is necessarily a trap because in the name of the opening it says it's a poison pawn, so you should know not to take the poison pawn, but a lot of guys go into this line not knowing that this is a particular line where the poison pawn cannot be taken, or else it's going to be completely lost. So, like in the like Sicilian Nahdorf poison pawn variation, the pawn can still be taken. It just leads to some dynamic play. White has some compensation for the pawn, etc., etc. But it's not necessarily losing for black. And this trap that I'm going to be showing is in the London system poison pawn variation, where if black chooses to take the pawn, he is going to be in some serious trouble. So let's jump right into it. So we're going to start off with d4, d5, bishop f4. So we're just going to signal the London system here. Just put the bishop on a good square. So we have knight f6, e3, c5, just striking back at the center here. Sometimes black chooses to bring his queen out, and it's still unclear whether or not he's going to play knight to c6 or something else. Maybe he'll go e6. Okay. White goes knight f3 here, just typical London system stuff. Just play really solidly, lend some support to d4, develop the knight, then you're going to develop the bishop, and then castle, maybe play h3 for a flight square for that bishop in case it gets kicked. But really solid play. And in this position, I'm going to show you what to do if queen to b6. So queen to b6 is common in a lot of these London system lines. I particularly think that knight to c6 followed by queen b6 is a better way to play here. But we're going to look at what happens if black goes queen b6 right away, which I think is a bit of an inaccuracy. And here, the move that I'm going to recommend, and for all the people that play the Jobava London, I'm sure you know this move, knight to c3. So this is it's very similar to the Jobava London in that this knight is coming to c3 instead of this pawn coming to c3. And the idea of bringing the knight to c3 is that this knight can jump to b5. And the question becomes, okay, can black play queen takes b2? And the answer is no. Black should play something like a6 to stop the knight from coming to b5 and then further develop, and it should be a relatively balanced game. However, if black chooses to get greedy and play queen takes b2, he's going to find himself in a whole lot of trouble after knight to b5. So you're jumping to this square, you're threatening knight c7 with the fork. Black's queen is kind of cut off now from getting back. Black is in a little bit of trouble here. You see the engine eval shoot up in white's favor here. So we got to think about what can black do. The only move that's going to stop knight to c7 is knight to a6. Everything else is just simply going to not get the job done. So we're going to take a look at knight to a6. And there are two ways that I am going to show you how to play this. Okay, so I'm going to start with the more complicated way with a little bit, it has a bigger advantage, but it's a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to show you pawn to a3 here. And then generally speaking, black is in a lot of trouble here because this queen is pretty much trapped. This queen can't get back into the game. Even if white doesn't even attack it right away, this queen has no squares. So generally what black will do here is play bishop to f5 to target this pawn on c2. However, the move that I'm going to show you refutes this. So I'm going to show you d takes c5 here, which is a little bit of a counterintuitive move. But the idea is simply to try and provoke black to trade into this endgame that's going to be losing. But also just open lines because black's king is not particularly safe here. So if queen takes c2, I'm going to show you to simply just trade into this more simplified position, but then at the end you have rook to c1. And it's clear that white's pieces are absolutely coming to life here. White is still down a pawn, but he's got exceptional play here for the pawn and some serious threats. So if black were to play bishop back to f5, then white simply can go knight b to d4, which comes with a whole slew of threats. You're hitting the bishop, and you're also threatening to go bishop to b5 followed by c6, which is going to be a problem. Also, c6 right away is a problem. The idea is after bishop to d7, retreating the bishop, you have pawn to c6. And then similarly, after bishop to c8, there's bishop to b5 check followed by c6, which is going to be relatively crushing. White has just a lot of play here, and the engine actually suggests the best move is to just give up the knight takes c5, whereupon you can just take this bishop and then the knight is still hit. That would be winning for white, but there's really not a whole lot to do here. So if you think about what happens if bishop to g6, let's see what happens there. You just go pawn to c6, which is pretty crushing. After b takes c6, then we simply just go rook takes c6, and this knight is pretty much trapped. If you go knight to b8, there's knight c7 check stuff, I'm sure, and it's really just not looking good for black here. So that line, so queen takes c2 is no good. What happens if bishop takes c2? Simply, you just do something very similar. You just play queen to c1, and this actually forces the queens off, and we transpose into that previous position after queen takes c1. If queen to b3 is tried, then you have knight to d2, and that would be winning as well. So those are really the only moves to consider here. Maybe black can try knight to h5 here. But this is not something to be worried about because of bishop to e5, and that's going to be a problem. If you we know that if we simplify into this endgame, it's going to be better for white. So this should be no problem at all. Okay, so that's what happens if you play a3. Generally speaking, bishop f5 is the only move that black can try there. And I have another move here that I am going to suggest just because it is a lot simpler and it leads to a very good position. And this move is rook to b1. So what's the idea here? The idea is that black only has one move here, and that's to play queen takes a2, and whereupon white will go rook to a1. The queen has to go back to b2. There's no other squares. And then I suggest rook takes a6. And this leads to a pretty good position for white after b takes a6 and knight to c7 check. And after king to d8, the key move here, I think, you could play knight takes a8. You could also consider knight g5. But the key move is that you can even play bishop e2. But sorry, the key move here is to go knight to g5. So the idea is you're just building on your threat. So you're still threatening to take this rook, but now you're also threatening to fork him again on f7, and it just black's position is just going to start collapsing here. So knight g5 is a reasonable move. I also suggest knight takes a8. Knight g5 and knight takes a8 are both good moves, but generally speaking, white is going to have a pretty good position here regardless. So I think this is a little bit simpler, but if you are feeling worthy of memorizing the other line and studying it, the other line with a3 is even stronger. Because it's simplifying into a forced winning position for white, and I think there's not really anything black can do about it, but it is important to know that both of those moves, a3 and rook b1, are both winning here, and black is going to be losing here, and it's going to be quite painful. But I just thought that this particular opening was worth making a video on, and there's some interesting lines here. So if you ever catch your opponent falling into this queen b6 before knight c6, you can go knight to c3 and allow him to, and if he takes, he's going to be in some serious trouble. So that's all for this video. Hopefully I'll have more opening traps out in the future, but that's all for today. So I'll see you guys next time.